And let me get to fact or fiction. It starts there. Alan Hahn, I'll start with you. If I said to you, SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the MVP, is going to be the face of the league if OKC wins the title, is that fact or fiction?
It's fiction, and can we stop with the face of the league? LeBron James is the face of the league until otherwise notified. He's still playing. He's still in the league. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander wins a championship, gets Finals MVP. He'll have one of the great seasons we've seen in a long time. He'll be an all-time season player, but not a face of the league. No.
Oh, we're going to dive into that, despite your reservations about it, a little bit later. In the meantime, Jay Will, if I said the Thunder are going to shut down Tyrese Haliburton in the finals, is that fact or fiction?
Greeny, I would say fact here. Look, you're talking about historically one of the best defenses the league has ever seen. And by the way, Lou Dort would be a safety essentially in the NFL, or even a bigger, 6'4", 215 pounds, with the size frame he has between Lou Dort, between Alex Caruso, Case and Wallace. They have all the pieces to stop Tyrese Haliburton.
Yeah, he's a linebacker, man. He's like an undersized linebacker. Bobby, if I said the Knicks, they were the last team to fall before the finals, if I said they need to go out and do whatever they can to get Giannis to have a chance to win the title next year, is that fact or fiction?
Greeny, as great as Giannis is, I am on team continuity when it looks like for New York. And I say that's fiction. When you look at the Knicks, 7 of their top 7 players are under contract next year. They need to go out and trim around the edges, improve that bench, trust that bench, figure out what you're doing with Mikal Bridges, who's extension eligible, and also Mitchell Robinson.
Go a little deeper into that, if you will, here, because you were telling us this morning that in the East right now, that does not feel like making the big move, making the big change, even for a player like Giannis, is the one to do?
No, I agree. Yeah, there is going to be so much volatility in the Eastern Conference this offseason when you look at Boston, when you potentially look at what happens in Milwaukee. The Knicks, as constructed right now, are a top 3 team in the Eastern Conference with Indiana and Cleveland. They just need to improve that bench. And certainly with Giannis, listen, they're going to be one of 29 teams that are going to make a phone call if he does become available. But I just think when you look at how this roster is constructed right now, what it would take to get him and what basically dismantle this roster, I'm more on the continuity factor.
Alan?
Come on. When you have an all-time great available, I feel like, Bobby, you've got to do whatever it takes. You find a way, somehow, some way, because if you don't get him, maybe somebody else in the East does, and that changes everything. I understand the continuity part of it. I understand that's what the Knicks want. But I also know it's the Knicks. It's the biggest market, and he's a superstar. He's an MVP finalist 7 years running. He's one of the best players in the league. And when you're trying to end over a half a century of not winning a championship, you got to figure out a way. Bobby, there has to be an avenue to getting Giannis Antetokounmpo if he wants to play for the Knicks.
Well, Bobby, what is that avenue?
Well, I would say this. Listen, they're in almost in an identical spot where they were last September before they made that Karl Anthony Towns trade. They've got 1 pick. That's from the Wizards. We don't even know if that's going to convey because it's top 8. So now you're looking at remove Jalen Brunson, likely remove Karl Anthony Towns from the equation. You're looking at a combination of OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, Mitchell Robinson there. That is a lot to go out and do it. And then you got to look at it from Milwaukee's perspective. Is that even good enough compared to what they can get from other teams?
Jay Will, final word. Giannis, yay or nay for the Knicks?
I think, look, building around the margins, I like the thought for Bobby, depending upon how much value you have to extract. The only thing I would say to New York fans is, as I look across this league, there aren't too many players that are New York City. And Giannis is one of those guys. And I know they're close to winning a world championship, but I'm not sure they're as close as they think they are consistently, considering the way the body types are of Karl Anthony Towns and, once again, Jalen Brunson for the long term. That is a question a lot of fans have to ask themselves. Is this in the best interest for us long term, considering injuries and other things that could occur?
So close and yet so far away. Back on Get Up, bottom of the hour. Here's a Pacers fan who really enjoyed this moment from Tyrese Haliburton, recreating the iconic Reggie Miller choke celebration. Game 1 versus the Knicks will live forever on his calf. It was the moment that tied the game, Allen, and sent it to overtime. and now it will live forever on that man's leg. Your thoughts?
Wear long socks. Like, what are we doing?
Jay Will, your thoughts?
My face is my thought, Greeny.
It's a good
Confused.
one. It's also, I mean, how are we modeling this exactly? Like, if that panned up, what do we think we're wearing here? It's a very strange look. Everything about this is disturbing.
And do more calf raises.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. Just get this off the screen. Let's go to literally anything, and we'll call it question marks for Bobby Marks. For some of the most glamorous franchises in the NBA, the offseason has long since begun. And so our front office insider, Bobby, is gonna break it all down for us. And Bob, let's start in Boston. I feel like the Celtics are the most interesting team because they have the most complicated set of decisions. I remind everyone, lest they have forgotten, that they are probably looking at an entire season now without their best player next year. So what should we anticipate the offseason looking like for the Celtics?
Greeny, I think there's three different options that Boston's going to be looking at this offseason here. The first, and it's probably the most unlikely, is basically running this group back, bringing back Al Horford and Luke Kennett, who are free agents. The cost, however, is going to be over $500 million when you look at salary and luxury tax penalties. There'll be a second apron team again. That's unlikely here. The second is the cost-cutting measure. Remember, $23 million over the second apron. How do you get under? Is it moving off Kristaps Porzingis? This is not a market where there are a lot of teams that have money to absorb it, potentially a player like Drew Holiday also. And then the third is the reset roster. Remember, as you said, Jason Tatum is likely going to be out for an extended period of time. Do you take a gap year? That would start certainly with a player like Jaylen Brown, where you're basically retooling the roster on a potential Jaylen Brown trade and then focus in on the 2026-27 season. The hard part is, and what you have to remember, is that Jason Tatum is going into year one of this Supermax. Derek White is entering year one. You still have to have a sustainable roster when Tatum returns from this injury.
What are the Celtics, what is your expectation, Alan, for the Celtics in the near future? And by that, I guess I really mean the year after next when Tatum is back.
Year after next is when I think that's when I'm with Bobby. I think the third option is the one you got to think about because
trading Jaylen Brown.
No. The third option is resetting the roster. I wouldn't trade Jaylen. To me, you keep these two guys together.
Well, then what would constitute resetting the roster?
Everybody else. You know, you build around them again because they are getting older. Al Horford, by the way, 39th birthday today. Happy birthday, Al. But it's like, you're getting older. Those two guys are in their prime. You've got to continue to build around them, but you can't build with older, more expensive players. You need a year to do that. It's okay to take that kind of gap year. I love the way Bobby phrased that. And you could still be a play-in team in the East because the East isn't really that good. So you have enough there that you can make a push, still be a play-in team, but also move on from some older pieces, reset your roster knowing you still have two centerpieces to build around.
Jay Will.
You know, I feel like with every time we talk about Boston, Giannis's name comes up. I mean, Giannis's name is going to come up with every team. Everybody out there talking about is going to try to force Giannis on some roster. If I were Brad Stevens, I would try my best to keep these two together. I truly believe that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are championship contenders consistently when they are on the court. And I think they are complementary towards each other. We have been able to see that multiple times with the way they've been able to play. So just like Alan and Bobby said, I think you have some pieces that are older. You can assess the market on Derek White. You get under the cap, you retool for the future. But I would have my future with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown as the face of the Boston Celtics moving forward for the next 5 years.
So the suggestion is that this group, as we have known it, has won a title last year, has came so close a couple of times in the seasons before that. They're sort of retooling around these two guys the way the Bulls retooled around Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. The reality, and I know we're going back a long way, but Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen are the only two players who are on all six of those championship teams. Phil Jackson was there, Jerry Krause was there, but they kept moving the pieces around them.
The same type of players.
Yeah.
They had the bigs in the second time around, just like they had the early one. That's literally what they should do. This is the formula. You just got to find other players who aren't as old and aren't as expensive.
Yeah, and look, in that conference, we'll see if that works. Okay, so that's the Celtics. How about their arch rivals on the opposite coast? The Lakers made what looked like it was going to be the most monumental of moves during the year last year by acquiring Luka Doncic, and of course they get knocked out in the first round. So, Bobby, what do we expect their offseason to look like?
I expect them to be extremely aggressive this offseason, especially with LeBron likely going into, he's got 1 year left on his contract. I think there's three things here. You've got to take advantage of the $60 million in expiring contracts when you're looking at certainly players like Gabe Vincent and Rui Hachimura. The second thing is they showed their hand at the trade deadline when they made that Mark Williams trade that wound up failing him on his physical. They are going to go out and get a center this offseason. We'll see how that goes. You've got one first-round pick to do that. And then the third thing is keep an eye on August 2nd. That is when Luka is eligible to sign that extension. So you're trying to build for the now, but I think you also have to have an eye for the future when eventually LeBron does retire here.
So that's an interesting piece of this to me, Alan, is that you've got Tatum is what he is, right? He's a young player. He had a catastrophic injury, but he'll be back, and, knock on wood, he'll be great. With the Lakers, you have to both have a plan to try and win the title next year, which feels within grasp, and also have something put together for what will then become Luka's Lakers into the future.
I'm not even worried about that. I'm not.
You're just winning next year.
This is your window right now. You still have LeBron James. With those two guys, you have a chance to win a championship because of their greatness together. What you can control is the most important need on this roster is a center. So they tried Mark Williams. He would have been a great fit. For whatever reason, that didn't happen. But I expect that they're going to be calling every single team that has a big man. And here in New York, they should be calling the Knicks about Mitchell Robinson. If the Knicks are trying to get assets, if they're trying to figure out what they want to do with their roster going forward, maybe even need to save money, perhaps that's a team that that's a guy the Lakers should be targeting. He would be a perfect fit on that team.
It's an interesting thought. I hadn't thought of it, but it's a good one. Jay Will, how about the Lakers?
Yeah, Greeny, I don't think they need another star. I think they need dogs, right? I think I look at a guy who's going to be in the NBA Finals in Isaiah Hartenstein. I'm like, okay, that's a great fit for the Lakers. Clint Capella, that's a great fit. 3-and-D type players. You look at Nicole Alexander-Walker, like another great fit. People that can space the floor but also can defend. I think you need the right pieces and depth to help out LeBron James and Luka with the style in which they play. They're both such prolific passers and masters of manipulating different offenses. You need defensive pieces, and that's what Luka thrives at when he was in Dallas, right? Lob guys at the rim, but also guys who can space the floor, shooting from the perimeter, but also can D up.
Bobby, do the Lakers have the wherewithal? People to have it sitting in their homes have not memorized what every team has at their disposal right now, cap-wise and roster-wise. Do the Lakers have the wherewithal to make the moves we're talking about?
They're challenged because of the lack of draft picks they have. Remember, they sent a pick to Dallas in 2029. They owe Utah a pick in 27. They've got one first to trade, and that's in 2031 or 32. They got a couple pick swaps. So from a draft standpoint, basically that 31 pick is really your lone big asset that you have left.
All right, give me one more as we're looking at the blueprints for the Blue Bloods. How about Golden State's offseason around Steph Curry? What do we expect?
I think Golden State is interesting here. Certainly there's a 2-year window with Curry, Butler, and Draymond on their contract for the next 2 years. They have the draft picks. We're talking about teams that don't have the draft picks. Golden State has 4 tradable firsts. They can swap first in the next 7 years. Here's where the problem is. 85% of their salary is comprised of Green, Curry, and Butler. Where do you have the contracts to go out and make a trade if it's available? Certainly, Jonathan Kuminga is going to be the wild card in all this. A restricted free agent. Do you resign him? To use him in a potential signing trade? Kuminga basically will dictate as far as where Golden State goes this offseason.
Jay Will, is there a path? Is there a path for Steph Curry, one of the most beloved players in NBA history, to make his way back to the biggest stage one more time?
Hey, look, I think if you're Golden State, if you're Mike Dunleavy here, you go big fish hunting. I mean, Giannis is that perfect fit there in the Bay Area. I know the West is absolutely loaded, but just think about the fit that Steph Curry would be able to have with Giannis and how compatible those two would be together. They have draft collateral. Obviously, you need to make moves and get under, but they've shown multiple times they don't care about going into the second apron or over the salary cap. I mean, that's what Joe Lacob does. And if there's a one way you can send off Steph Curry off into the sunset on the horse, that's with Giannis.
Oh my God!
Why are you making that face?
Because that's the KD thing all over again. If you do something like that,
meaning they just be so good.
Oh my God! I mean, but Bobby, is there really an avenue? I know there's 4 first-round picks, but how much can you possibly spend in tax and everything else to get a guy like, to put a guy like that on that roster? How can you possibly make that happen?
I would say how it'll happen is that you're likely trading Jimmy Butler, Draymond Green in the trade.
Yeah.
That's how it's happened. You can't, there's not a scenario where you could fit Giannis and then also keep the other 3 players there.
Well, Bobby, I would say this. Thank you for your service, Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler. Thank you for being a part of the team. Bye-bye.
That would be a fascinating decision for them to make on those players. I mean, Jimmy Butler's been there for 20 minutes, but I mean, Draymond Green has been there forever, and obviously a huge part of it. And the way they have conducted themselves, I get it. I mean, if you're going to get Giannis, obviously you consider absolutely everything, but that would be a fascinating one. All these things are going to happen soon, by the way, because the NBA draft is the end of this month. If Giannis is going to get traded, it is overwhelmingly likely to happen in the next few weeks. In the meantime, in 2 days, the NBA Finals is a guarantee to begin. 8:30 Eastern, Thursday night on ABC. Tyrese Haliburton and the Pacers, SGA, the MVP, and the Thunder. Game 1 coverage begins with NBA Countdown, 8 Eastern on ABC.